The Bible is considered one of the most important religious and historical documents, consisting of a series of stories told throughout time. Stories that have been distorted from its original meanings over centuries. The Bible has often been used for political gain or interpreted by religious leaders to influence. To influence what, you wonder? Influence behaviors, to influence decisions, and even influence the human mind. But here at Shifting Religious Concepts, our message is simple. Seek the deeper meanings that the stories of the Bible were always meant to tell. Read, interpret, and understand the Bible and its contents as the great storytellers of the past intended it. Now is the time to capture the depth of not only who, but what God truly is. Now is the time to shift from the ideas of identifying yourselves as sheep, but as powerful, living, thriving gods yourself. Shift into the power of not discovering, but uncovering what God created you to be. Right here with SRC, as we began to unpack the secret knowledge that was intended to be shared with everyone.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Top of the morning, good rising to our SRC family. I am Anala D, your host for today, and we have truly missed you. But again, we are back in full force. Today, we have with us Mark Thomas, our contributor. We have, and also our video editor and moderator, Pastor Archie Sanders, who does spiritual research and teacher, and also a Bible scholar. We also have with us Dr. Griffo, publisher, author, published author, biblical scholar, and world-renowned sought-after public speaker. And let us not forget Lavelle Rouser, well-known numerologist. And today, I don't believe that we're going to have Tamisha Burgess with us. She's taking care of some personal challenges and some personal things today, so she will not be with us, but we are ready to go. We are ready to talk about the book of Numbers. What does it all mean? Now, before we get going, I want to say this to our audience that is on right now. Before we began this show, you need to use the same link that you used to get on, send it to your friends and family, and tell them to jump on, because today we are going to have so much fun unpacking the book of Numbers. And we encourage you, raise your hand if you have a question, if you want to make a comment or anything like that, please raise your hand and we will allow you to do so. What we're going to do right now, we're going to start off with Mark Thomas. Mark Thomas is going to give us a summary of what we studied and unpacked in the last episode. So right now, let's just have Mark Thomas come in and give us a summary.
Okay, thank you, Nala. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So real quick, because I know we're anxious to get going on today's program. It's been a couple of weeks and we can hardly wait, actually. Our last broadcast was on the 5th of September. And in that really excellent presentation, the SRC panel went in depth on chapters 14 and 15 of the book of Numbers. Dr. Griffo led us off with a summary of those chapters, where he described the scene as Moses and Aaron attempted to lead the Israelites into Canaan. And the conversation then spread out to all the panel, where we went over how the congregation, as it is described in the story, doubted, feared, and began to revolt against the wishes of the Lord. Remember, the Lord as expressed through Moses. The SRC panel discussed at length how this is all once again symbolic of the inner struggle we all face when we seek a higher consciousness. Dr. Griffo explained how even the names of the doubters were a clue to this symbolism. And Lavelle Rouser illuminated the great numerological significance of the number 40 and why it is so often mentioned in the Bible and is so important to the same endeavor of self-discovery, or as we at SRC like to say, discovery of the true God that is us. Tamisha Burgess, Pastor Archie Sanders, and of course, Anala D all made very important contributions as well. There was one thing from last week that really stood out for me. It was the concept that this book of Numbers is telling us about ourselves and our propensity for distracting and even sabotaging our own goals with, as Archie said, impure thoughts. Remember how Anala spoke of the congregation as these very same thoughts. And I liked what Tamisha said at the end of the show about burning bridges, once again alluding to these same impure thoughts. Really, really good stuff. So much, there was so much more from last week. If you missed it, please, I urge everyone to go back and go on YouTube, just search Shifting Religious Concepts on YouTube and watch the video. And you might get your Bible out and peruse the chapters that we were talking about at the same time, because it really does come together when you do this exercise. All right, and all that brings us to today, to chapter 16 through 18, where I have a feeling the congregation, as they call themselves, is going to question the actual authority of Moses. So let's start with that.
All righty. Thank you so much for that, Mark Thomas. We're going to get started with Dr. Griffo, who is going to give us a look inside the book of Numbers, chapter 16 and beyond, if he's prepared to do that. But definitely starting with chapter 16, what are we unpacking today with that chapter, Dr. Griffo? Talk to us about that.
Wholeness and wellness, everybody. This is just a continuation of the previous 14 and 15, where, as the moderator, Brother Thomas was saying, how the children of Israel were rebelling against Moses and God. So as we continue on in the 17 and 18, you're going to find out where God kind of shifted the authority over to Aaron, it seems, or it appears that way. But those people that were rebelling against Moses, of course, were the ones that are the same thoughts that rebel against our God-like qualities and have us doing certain things that we know we shouldn't do. So this is nothing exceptionally different in chapter 16. It just goes into I think it's about 3 different tribes, and it's a total of about 250 people that I'm sure Brother Lavelle will be able to break down that number 250 and what it actually means. And it goes into how those people will be swallowed up or ate, and basically meaning they won't see the promised land. Those thoughts that would consume the other children of Israel, God is trying to keep those thoughts from infecting the rest of the children of Israel, or in our case, with our thoughts. We want to keep the lower thoughts away from the higher thoughts. So it's about the separation of the higher consciousness from the lower consciousness. So then those 3 individuals would represent the lower consciousness, which also deals with astrologically how the winter months separate themselves from the spring, the summer, and the fall, where you have the planting, the harvesting, the reaping. And then when you hit the winter months where everything dies, you know what I mean? It separates, and it's not good, let's say, for man as far as being able to sustain himself. So by separating these 3 tribes, then you're separating those negative thoughts from those lower 3 chakras from the other higher 4, and allows you to stay in a higher state of consciousness. So in essence, that's what you're reading in chapter 16 with all of the different names. Again, Korah means ball. Dothan means belonging to a fountain. And Abirahim means my father is exalted. So that's a good thing to say, that the father is exalted. We understand what that's about raising the consciousness. But Korah, who was the lead one, means Baal. And Baal was one of the things that if you read in Leviticus chapter 13 and 14, when the people that had the plague of leprosy, one of the things was that it made them Baal. So this was like a curse. So this person was like a cursed type of entity, and he brought cursed thoughts. And so that's why he had to be separated.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Dr. Griffo. Now, Pastor Archie, what was religion telling everyone when you were preaching, and what did you learn when you went to school for pastoring and all of that? What were you teaching people as it relates to religion?
Okay, good morning, Anala and everyone. Hey, it's real interesting that Dr. Griffo came forth with that analogy. That's good. That's wonderful, because I was sitting here thinking as I went through this lesson, this chapter 16, how they fell off in a hole. And he just brought that right on out and made it clear, because we've taught people that you don't mess with God's people. And you mess with him, he's going to do something to you. You know what I'm saying? That just put it in a nutshell. You don't mess with God's people, and God is watching you. But this book and this Bible was written very cleverly. And so much so that it took thousands of years to write. So we taught people what was put out there for us exoterically, which was meant for us to look at the symbols and take everything literally. But in all actuality, this is a big science lesson for everyone. It teaches science, but we don't see it that way, because we are constantly looking at what is literally happening. And when the word God is mentioned, all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute now. This is from the highest level of a being could be, and you got to follow exactly what it said. But in all actuality, that isn't what it meant. We taught to be afraid of those who God has put in leadership. But I'm sitting here thinking, as I studied that, Lord have mercy, how often have I heard that bishops and elders and ministers and evangelists, right after they have just finished speaking to people, went to a hotel room and had people waiting for them and did all kinds of devilish stuff, but they were powerful people. So Moses was up against something, because he was teaching a lesson exoterically to those, like I said, the stage. You got to remember, we're on the stage here that has been set for us, and it puts us in a position to be afraid of what God can do to you and what he will do to you. But in all actuality, as Dr. Griffo said, it is showing you how those bottom levels are destroyed in order for you to move up to the higher way of thinking, to put it all in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Pastor Archie, for that. And we're going to get to asking Lavelle about that 250. But before I do that, I want to just read verse 2 of the chapter of 16, because Dr. Griffo brought this out. And it says, and they rose up before Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princesses of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. So think about that. So these are your lower thoughts, because before you can rise up, you have to be low. So these are your lower thoughts that actually rose up against those higher thoughts. Now, isn't that really something to think about? And Dr. Griffo pretty much brought that out just a few minutes ago about how our lower thoughts can rise up against our higher thoughts. But Dr. Griffo, before we go to Brother Lavelle, I want you to share with us, give us an example, give our audience an example of how that lower thought could rise up? What happens? What are they experiencing when that lower thought rise up against that higher thought?
This is where, you have, we've seen that concept of you have the angel on one side and the devil on that side. So then you're wrestling with who you're going to listen to. Are you going to listen to the right side, which has the angel on it, or are you going to listen to the left side, which has the quote unquote devil on it? And it comes in the form of being conflicted in what you should do, knowing what's right, but actually sometimes not always doing what's right. It comes in the form of riding by Krispy Kreme donuts, and you know that you got diabetes, and you've had your sugar for the day. So instead of you riding on by that, you allow that lower nature to wrestle with you, and that fleshly nature to say make that B line on in the Krispy Kreme and get you some more sugar, which is going to spike your sugar. You know what I mean? It's that type of thing of knowing that we know what to do inherently, but we sometimes overrule those instincts by allowing and conceding to those thoughts that know that are not harmful to us. So here, the children of Israel, knowing that God rescued them out of Egypt, and then was taking them into a land where he had to prepare them, but yet they could not be, patient enough. They could not sacrifice their thoughts enough to be patient to be able to go into the promised land. Instead, they caved in and said, well, let's go back. You know what I mean? Like that abusive relationship. You had this guy and he beat the crap out of you, and you should leave. And then you break up with him for a few days, and then you miss him so much now, knowing that he could possibly kill you, and you still go back to the abuse as opposed to moving forward and getting a restraining order and some protection. So that's how you look at it. That's how I'm looking at it with the children of Israel, knowing that they should have kept going forward, yet they tried to go back and say, we need to go back into the land of the Egyptians where, according to the Bible story, they were being mistreated.
So in essence, then, so what's happening here is that let's take the Krispy Kreme example, and even the person who's being abused in a relationship. So on one side, you're hearing yourself, girl, you don't need to go on that Krispy Kreme donut. You don't need that cookie. But yet that lower mind, the higher mind is telling you, you don't need that donut. That higher mind is telling you this is an abusive relationship and you need to do something different. Yet the lower mind tells you it's going to be okay. And we got to remember that the lower mind, the root chakra, means that there's some fear there. You don't see yourself being able to move out of that. So there is a struggle. What I'm hearing from you, Dr. Griffo, there's a struggle between the lower mind and the higher mind. And if you are not strong enough, the lower mind prevails.
Right.
So you going in there and getting that Krispy Kreme donut or you wind up staying in that abusive relationship way too long, and then something happens.
Lack of discipline. Absolutely. Lack of discipline.
Absolutely.
And, in the Islamic world, they call it jihad, which is struggle. Now they mistranslated it now to mean external struggle, where they're fighting against anybody who's not a Muslim. But it originally meant the internal struggle that we go through on a daily basis to choose to do the right things as opposed to doing the wrong things. Wow. And so that's what it is, that lack of discipline. If we had the discipline, our minds would overrule our bodies and be able to choose the righteousness over the so-called unrighteousness.
The thing about it is people don't realize, I didn't realize, I'm going to talk about myself. I'm not going to talk about other people. I did not realize that the struggle all those years was always within me. Mm-hmm. When I was being taught in church, I always looked at someone else, and my thoughts would have been, even in reading this right here, I would have thought about those things externally. I was like, like sometimes when people rise up against the pastor, or this group rising up against this group, never understanding that it was all about myself. Everything is about oneness. Guys, everything is about us. And religion taught us to look outside of ourselves and see it was about someone else other than ourselves. Now, I'd like to go to Brother.
Can I jump in right quick before you transfer? Here's another example for those who are not Christian. Buddha always talked that desire is the lead to suffering. You know what I mean? So our desires lead us to suffering. When we just sit back and allow the God in us to take control, then all of the right decisions will be made. And you're right, there will be no more suffering. However, because we have these desires, the desire to want to fulfill our base needs with food and sex and alcohol and things that are not on a higher plane. So it's just another example of the various religions that exist that teach the same thing.
Got you.
But look, Dr. Griffo reminded me of some African philosophy. They joined in with nature. They did not go against nature. But we now who have our own consciousness and we living in now time, we question nature instead of joining in with nature. I just want to throw that in there so you can kind of understand that wait a minute now, one of the things that happens being that we have a conscious mind and we're knowledgeable a whole lot of things, instead of going along with nature, we go against nature. That's what causes that problem there. That little where that whole fault comes and everybody fall in it.
I love that. And we're gonna talk a lot more about that. When we get back, we're gonna let our brother Lavelle, he's gonna break that number down for us that we just talked about in verse 3. So don't go anywhere. Stay right here as we share this commercial with you. Thank you for sticking with us as we went to that commercial break. Pastor Archie, I love what you just said, that we people no longer work with nature because of, and we had a series some time ago where we showed the illustrations of how your ego, that egotistical mind, can take over. So then we think that we know more than the higher step that lives within us. Instead of allowing that to guide us, we try to take lead and do everything on our own. That personal self is what I'm talking about. But when I look outside my window and I see the birds and everything, the nature, and right now, if you're taking and looking at nature closely, you can see that things are changing. Birds are going where they need to go and all of that. And they just do it. They don't stand there and say, wait a minute, it's getting, I don't like this. They don't try to fight against what's happening. They flow with nature, and then everything comes out. In spring, they're born again. They have the little chicks, and life just keeps going on smoothly for them. I look at birds, and they are happy. Even when a cat snatches them up, the last thing they think about is happy. Is what it looks like to me. They don't even. They try to get away, but they don't seem to struggle because it seems to me they understand that this is balance for them, and that's what I think that, Pastor Archie, that you're talking about. So now, let's go to, as I promised, we're going to go to our brother Lavelle Rosser, who's going to tell us about that numerology. What does that number mean?
Greetings, everyone. The 250, and I like what everyone has shared. The Krispy Kreme is something else, but the 250. If we examine, the digits of 250, we start out with the number 2, which deals with duality. And duality is a world in which we live in constantly. You know, some people like to see duality meaning good versus evil. Pythagoras, the great mathematician and numerologist, said that everything according to numbers was in duality based on the number 2 itself. And so when we look at the 250, we also have the number 5, which deals with the mind. And so already we have the 2 and the 5, which tells me that there's this constant struggle. There's this constant oscillation between good and evil, the mind and our thoughts, the mind and our emotions. So we're constantly going back and forth. We're vacillating, okay? And what has to be done? We have to come to a point of centeredness. We have to come to a spirit of a meditative type of mind, where you're constantly thinking in a pure sense, in a clear sense. And when we add the 2, the 5, and the 0, it equals the number 7. And the number 7 has to deal with our spiritual holy temple, okay? 7 is the number that puts us in that state of serenity, of that state of being calm, and that state of being able to make the decisions which are proper and necessary for the betterment of humanity and for the betterment of the individual as well. And so when we look at the number 7, we also know that number 7 is ascribed to nature itself. Everything under the sun in nature vibrates with the number 7. All of the naturalness of nature is of the number 7. Natural sounds vibrates to the number 7. That's why you have 7 notes in a musical scale, okay? That's why you have 7 vowels in our English language. We're taught that there's only 5, but in truth, there's 7, okay? So this breakdown of the 250 is informing us and telling us that we have to go much deeper into what we may see, okay? There's a lot of artificiality that's out there, but when you deal with 7, you pierce the veil. You pierce the veil of knowledge. You pierce the veil of insight. You become a person of knowing. And that's the challenge of the 250. Now, the 250 is a very strong and powerful vibration because it's dealing with 3 digits. We got the 2, the 5, and the 0. And remember, as I said in prior sessions with SRC, the 0 amplifies and empowers everything that we look at and everything that we do as it pertains to any other of the numbers. So the 250 is worthy of our recognition, and it causes us to study, but we first must study ourselves, okay? And we must look at that, as I said earlier, that vacillation, that duality that we're constantly at war with all the time, okay? And please, let's not stop at that Krispy Kreme, keep going.
That's good. You got me thinking about Krispy Kreme donuts right now. You know, a lot of people, when you talk about the number 5, as you just unpacked that for us, Brother Lavelle, a lot of people look at the number 5, say, oh, that's good, it's changed, this is the year of change. But what they don't understand, what I didn't understand, I'm just thinking about that now, that even with the number 5, change can be good and change could be not what you want to walk into at that time. So you when you're talking about change, you're talking about, should I do this, or should I do this, or should I go this way, or should I go that way? That's where you go back into that meditation. So, and understanding yourself, understanding who you are, so that you can make sure that when you accept or move into that change, you're moving into the right change, because there's a lot of change going on, it sounds like to me. So let me ask you this question while we have you speaking, Brother Lavelle. In chapter 17, the first verse, it says, and the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and take of every one of them a rod according to the house of their fathers, of all their princesses according to the house of their fathers, 12 rods. Write thou every man's name upon his rod. Now I know that has to do with something as it relates to numerology in the name, but why rod? Between you and Dr. Griffo and Pastor Archie and Mark Thomas, explain to our audience, unpack this verse for us.
Well, what I see in verse 2, speak unto the children of Israel and take of every one of them a rod according to the house of their fathers. Well, when you study astrology, you have what is known as 12 houses, okay? And then, and of their princesses according to the house of their fathers, 12 rods. Well, once again, that's speaking of astrology and the 12 signs of the astrology, or 12 signs of the zodiac.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Griffo, unpack that a little bit more for us, would you?
Oh, sure, absolutely. This goes into the 12 cranial nerves. So you have 12 cranial nerves that that are in our brains. 10 of them come and deal with the movements of the face or the hearing and the eyes and the this, and then 2 of them descend down the throat into one is called the vagus nerve, or the it's the word for pneumonia. I can't say it right now, but it deals with our windpipes, our lungs, our this, and then the one that's attached to it is called the accessory nerve. So then, as we learned in the Bible, that 10 of the tribes went north and 2 went south, and the 2 went south are those 2 nerves. Now, on another note, if we recall the story of Moses being told by God to take his rod and throw it on the ground, and it turned into a snake, and then the Egyptian priest came along and did the same thing, right? So then these rods, the rod is also synonymous with the spinal column, aka the snake, because the spinal column looks like a snake. So when you try to handle that snake, it turns into a rod. It stiffens up. But when you go in accordance with God and takes God's instruction, then that rod then turns into a snake. If you try to handle it yourself, it's just stiff. So then there's a difference in when you allow the rod to unfurl, as opposed to you trying to make the rod unfurl itself. You understand? So when they're talking about these rods, if you notice, if you keep reading that chapter, they talk about how Aaron's rod started to bud, and it started to grow these buds, right? And they use the word, they use the word bud. So the word bud, the buds are what we call the Vesica Pisces. It's this symbol where you take 2 circles and you join them together at their vertices, and it creates this circle, right? Now, inside of our brains, we also have what's called the amygdala. The amygdala is shaped like with this symbol. So it's connected to the hippocampus, and it deals with memory and Moses and the word museum. There's a connection there. So what you're looking at is also the story of Jacob, when Jacob wrestled with the angel, and he called that place Peniel, but it was also called Lutz, L-U-T-Z. The word L-U-T-Z, as well as the word Bethel, means house of God, and it deals with Lutz. It's also almond shaped. So the almond shaped is what these buds turn into. So they start to sprout, or the knowledge starts to come in, and it opens up like a lotus blossom.
Got you. So let me ask you this question. So now, when it talks about write down every man's name upon his rod, and man, of course, we've talked about this in SRC before, that man is not female, or male is everyone. So when it said write their name, so that means that everyone, all those things you just described, that we all have our individual characteristics in those body parts that you just mentioned, in the in the spine and all those things. It's like I am connected with everyone, but at the same time, there's a specific part of me that's, explain that. I still don't get the
Well,
die every man's name upon his rod. It's like everyone has their own.
Right. When you correlate the 12 tribes to the 12 breastplates to the 12 cranial nerves, you understand that each of those tribes had a certain characteristics, just like the astrological signs have certain characteristics. So then you're going to have certain undesirable traits of each zodiac sign, as well as certain desirable traits of each zodiac sign. So then that deals with your personality. And when it says write these names, it depends on how these particular tribes interact with one another and how they manifest the quote unquote glory of God. So then when you understand that correlation between the astrological signs, the breastplates, the 12 gates in the book of Revelations, where, and God told them to take the reed and measure it, and those that are within, count them in, and those that are without, don't count them. Well, if you're doing like the two tribes, Judah and Benjamin did, then you're going to have the great qualities of God. If you're going to do like the other 10 tribes that went astray, they were the ones that were always being attacked by the so-called Canaanite tribes, the Amalekites, the different things. So they were not doing the things that were in accordance with God. But Judah, who was later joined by Benjamin, were always on the correct side. This is why the Messiah came through this particular lineage, because they were always on the right side. And as if you recall from some of the earlier classes, when they had the 12 tribes set up into 4 camps, and Judah was on the right side. So that's what happens is those 2 tribes that were the ones that came south are the ones that have the great personality, the great qualities of God. And then those other 10 were not. You remember they said that the scepter shall not move from Judah until Shiloh comes, or till the Messiah comes. You follow? Mm-hmm. Because they understood that Judah being on the right side was it's a correspondence to you're thinking the right way, you're doing the right things. So that's what you're dealing with, those personalities.
So right here, and we've talked about this in one of our other broadcasts, that when you are aligning up people for your organization, for your business, even the people you associate with, you really want to make sure that you are, especially if you're going to work closely with these people, that you are lining up people or working with people that you align with. And this is exactly what is happening here. This is not rocket science. This is like, it's showing us that they were keeping, or they were understanding based on the name, as I know that Brother Lavelle would teach us, according to their names, they were being organized in a certain way. And and I think that's basically what you are also saying, right? Dr.
Yeah. And Brother Lavelle, I can't wait for him to reiterate this, but because I've learned this from him about how the different corporations utilize numerology to understand the type of employees they have. So the same thing as it goes right into what you're saying. Once you understand how to utilize these ancient sciences, then you'll be able to surround yourself with the right people, or you'll know the type of person you're dealing with, and you'll know how to motivate them to get what you need done.
That's absolutely right. And that's what, I mean, when you look at, and when we talked about unpacking the book of Numbers, we were a little like, well, how are we going to deliver this? How are we going to unpack it that it makes sense? But now that we're unpacking it, what we realize that it's teaching us, it is teaching us exactly what the corporations and everyone else knew a long time ago. They know more about us than we know about ourselves. And if you study this, and like Dr. Griffo said, study this art, then you will understand yourself a lot more and know how to move into success, know how to be the best you that you want to be. Now, we're going to run and take another commercial break for a second. But when we come back, each one of our contributors here are going to talk about what they want to leave you with. Now, if any of our audience has anything they want to say about any of these chapters, ask a question, please make sure when we come back, be prepared to ask your question. And we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Want to know what it's like behind the walls of a women's prison? Get Anala D's latest release, Screaming from the Inside, Incarcerated Women and the Journey to Awakening. Want to study Anala D's roadmap for getting released in 2 years after being sentenced to 20 years served to the door? Obtain her book, How to Prepare a Parole Package and Trigger Your Release from Prison Today.
All righty, then. Thank you for sticking with us during that commercial break. So now what we want to do, as I mentioned before, what we want to do is we want to give each one of our contributors an opportunity to leave you with their thoughts, including giving you some of what's in chapter 18 and what that means. I'm packing a little bit of that for you as well. We're going to start today with Pastor Archie.
I'm gonna keep it to a minimum, but yeah, there's a lot that came about with both of these chapters. As you get into 18, you'll begin to see that the Lord is telling Aaron who can do service and who can't do service, and what is going to happen if you're doing something that you are not allowed to do, which in 16 showed that Korah, they wanted the burn incense. They figured, well, we got the same abilities and God-given senses that you have, but it proved different according to what was written, showing that if you do put yourself up above the position that you have been given, that you're going to fall off. So that stage, I'm thinking here, we're still on we're also on a world stage, showing what those priests, those religious priests back in the day, what they wanted, what they were trying to get people to understand, who you messing with. When you start looking at it not literally and esoterically, that there's some things that are going to happen to you. And that's a bigger stage that you have to look at, because now you're starting to deal with the Egyptians, who they were, and what they had done. Because I find it kind of funny that a lot of the training came from the Egyptians, but the Egyptians was teamed to be the bad guy, or the ones that were against what God wanted. But a lot of training came from them. So I would say, look a little deeper in your studies. Go look at the Mephite philosophies and find out what was taught there, because that would take a long time. But I'm leaving with you to go do some more research and find out what happened before this time.
Right. Thank you for that, Pastor Archie. Now, also, I want to just kind of unpack a little bit what you just said about as you move into chapter 18, and that is, the priest was saying, well, you better not burn incense, and you better not do this, because if you do any of these things, this is what we do. So you can't do it. So if you do these things, this is going to happen to you. So that, again, was trying to keep us in a position of being sheep, making us fearful. Or if we do the same thing that you're doing, Mr. Priest, that something's going to happen to us. So we know that part of this right here is the manipulations that were put into this word, taking things and personifying them and making people afraid. I remember in church, you couldn't even, where they had a little wine and bread, you better not touch that table. You better not even go over there. I mean, because if you weren't worthy to go there, and they still practice this right now in most churches. So therefore, we got to realize that when you, as you said, Pastor Archie, when you are reading this word, you got to go deeper. You just can't look at it and say, well, you know what, you better not burn incense because only the priest could do that. You better not do this because only the priest could do that, because that is not true. God lives in each and every one of us, and no one else has any other power than you do, except for the living Creator who gave us the power that we have, which lives in us, which gives us that same power. That's where we get our power from. And that's what I want people to remember as we talk about these things, that there are some places in here, there's some things that are written to try to make you fearful of moving into the power that you possess. And with that, I'm going to ask Mark Thomas to give us a breakdown, unpack what you want to leave people with today, and also give us a little bit of 18 briefly.
Yeah, well, you know, I want to go back to chapter 16 because I kind of got stuck on that a little bit.
Okay.
In in verse 32, it says, and then the men that appertained unto Korah and all their goods. Now I looked up appertain, that means to relate to or to relate, which means you relate or you form a relationship. So these people all formed a relationship. And what are you doing when you form a relationship with anything? It's what Dr. Griffith was talking about with the Krispy Kreme. I mean, you're not just thinking about it, you have a relationship with that donut and you actually give it power, you give it authority in your life when you do that. So I get back to the imagination series where it comes down to choice, and you should think about the authority you're giving people and the relationships that you, and it's not just relationships with people, it's relationships with things, it's relationship with thoughts. It can be a relationship with anything. So we need to be selective about these things in order to, to think in the higher consciousness. That's all I got. I don't have anything to say about 18 and all. I'm sorry about that. That's it.
No problem with that. That was very, very good. And I like that. Having the right relationship with the right thought. When you really look at this whole Bible, when you read, everything in it is about, it's about us and it's about how we think. That's the bottom line to it. If you're going to have, like you said, Mark Thomas, if you're going to have a relationship with that donut, then you're going to most likely go get it. If you're going to have a relationship with sickness, most likely you're gonna see that in your life. If you are going to have a relationship with poverty and all those things, they will manifest in our world. That's just the way it is. I tell you something, the Creator was just so good at how we were created. We were created. We can't blame anybody else because we were created with the power of thought. We were created with the power of imagination, which allows us to decide what comes in our world. Go ahead.
The thing is to be conscious of that, to make it a conscious thought, because I think, and I've done it myself, is that you don't think about things, you're just carrying on through your life, and you do a lot of things actually unconsciously, and you're actually forming relationships every day with things.
With your thoughts, you're forming relationships and don't even know it. I mean, you pass by. I know some people. This girl told me once. She said that, and I've never seen it before, but they said there's a blue light. And now Dr. Griffith started this whole thing with the crispy donut thing, but she said there's a blue light that comes on when they just bring the donuts out or something. When I lived in Miami, she said this, and she said when she saw the blue light come out, she said she'd hit brakes, make a U-turn wherever she was, and get back over there to them donuts. That means that she had already formed a relationship with that blue light at Krispy Kreme donuts. Oh, somebody just told me it's a red light. Navy mom just said it's a red light. Okay, so it's a red light to go back and get those donuts that just came out of the oven. And David mom said it's a hot sign. So you're right. I like that. I like that a lot, Mark Thomas. Now let's go to Brother Lavelle, who's going to unpack, break down, let us know.
Okay. The Krispy Kreme.
That's not good for you.
Actually, I'd like to go back and speak about the 250 because, in our conversations and listening to everyone, it has so much meaning for us. I like to go back to the point of, dealing with the duality, that struggle, that war that we have within ourselves. In our mind, this is the battle that's happening with us each and every day of our lives. But we are supposed to grow through this struggle. And as we grow through this struggle, we're supposed to reach a point, and that point would be the number 7, which is the addition of the 2 and the 5 and the 0. And that's where we hit our point of spirituality. That's where we hit our point of transcendence of who we are. That's where we unload and we drop the fear. Once we drop the fear, you find that everything that ever was just an illusion. Okay, and so that's what I like to leave our people with, and understand that the controlling factor out here is through our five senses, but it's dealing with our five negative senses, and that's something that we can talk about later. Okay, but we got to grow through this all.
All right, I love that. We must grow. But would you just say one thing now? When you say we must grow through this all, Brother Lavelle, just give us maybe a couple points of how a person can grow through this.
Well, one of the things is to face and deal with your fear, or to deal with anger. Okay, many of us are walking around with a whole lot of anger, and it's consuming us. Anger is like fire. And one of the things you don't want to do, you don't want to play with fire. Okay. And that much anger can cause disease and death, in our own bodies.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So how do we grow? Brother Lavelle just said you must face and manage those fears. And the other thing you said is you must face and deal with anger, because all of that just stays within you, causes disease and all kinds of things. Is that what you said?
Exactly.
All right. Okay, good. Did you have one more? Because it looked like you had one more to tell us.
Allowing ourselves to be calmer in our thoughts and our feelings and our desires and our emotions.
Okay.
Taking an extra time to trying to understand whatever situation that you may be in. Okay.
I like
observance of everything that's going on within you and everything that's certainly around you.
I found that the statement you just made, I find that to be very helpful for me, even when I'm making a purchasing decision. Because if you think about something long enough, you're going to find a way to go buy it.
Right.
But if you think about it and say, now, is this one thing I need right now? Or you reason it out, you may make a different decision. But most people, that's what retailers hope that we do, and that is make decisions right on the cuff there. I'm going to buy this right now. But I find myself, when I think about it a little bit more, when I reason it out, when I use every part of my mind that I've been gifted with, then I can make the right decision. Thank you so much for that, Brother Lavelle. Now we're going to go to Dr. Griffo, who is going to leave us with final thoughts, and let's give us a little bit of insight on 18 if he chooses to. Dr. Griffo.
I'm sorry. Both what everybody has contributed is I'm going to try to hit on everybody's points to a degree, but and that's why, and I think it's 18 where they talked about that they had to sacrifice a cow, a goat, and a ram. Those are all animals, so you must sacrifice your animal nature. That's one. When you look at the names again, Dothan, which means belonging to a fountain. So a fountain, as we know, is water which will quench the fire. Abiram, which means my father is exalted. Eleazar, which means God has helped. So you're looking at these names to understand that you're trying to ascend your higher nature from your lower nature. And this is why they had those people doing what? Once they had to cleanse the temple with what? Censers or incense burners, those things that are found in the Catholic Church that they throw that's got all of the censers. So as you were saying, they didn't want the people to burn incense because they understand that incense like frankincense and myrrh are what? They actually stimulate the hippocampus area of the brain, the amygdala portion of the brain. And again, amygdala is from where they get the word Magdalene. And what did Mary Magdalene do? She rubbed Jesus's feet with spikenard. Spikenard is a certain fragrance that has a desired effect upon the brain. So when they was talking about cleansing the temple with these incense, they understand the science behind how the brain and the body works with certain fragrances, which is to bring you to a higher thought process, a higher spiritual thing. This is, again, why the Catholic Church does this, because they want a more tranquil environment in the services, or in the case of in the house of the Lord. So being that this is our house of the Lord, we should also as well not only burn incense that's going to help bring more tranquility, but also have the thoughts that are going to bring more tranquility, so we won't have the fire. We won't have the misdirection and, doing these things that, again, y'all are killing me with the Krispy Kreme. And I'm sorry that I got everybody to think about them donuts, but, they satisfy our temporary desires, but not our eternal desires. And so what we have to do is start looking at things that will satisfy our eternal desires, as opposed to the temporary fixes that we get from food, from having sexual relations, from being angry, and living out in our emotions. We should be trying to live out more so in a more tranquil environment where our spirituality steps in and leads us and shows us the way.
I love that. I love that, Dr. Griffo. I mean, and sometimes, and I think you just touched on that a few seconds ago, when you go get that thing that you thought you wanted, like whenever I have gone and bought that donut, I didn't even like it because, I don't like the yeast taste because there's an aftertaste, but they smell so good, they just draw you right in. And then after you eat it, how many of you ever done that? Have you ever thought about something so much, then you go get it, and then, like, God, I didn't even like it. So you're absolutely right. If you really got to start to manage those senses and instead of allowing those senses to manage your mind. So with that, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I just wanted to find out if there's anyone in our audience who would like to take off their mute button, ask a question, or just make a comment. You can do that. And also, I want to let you know if there are some things that you want us to cover. Listen to somebody after eating about 10 donuts, baby mom. If there's a topic, a Bible scripture, a chapter that you want us to cover, that you want us to just let you know about, please send that to us in our chat, or just open up and let us know. And then the next time we come on, we will try to cover that for you, because I understand that even in the book of Numbers, there may be some things that you read and you like wondering what that particular verse means. Please let us know. We will cover it the next time, even if we've already gone past that particular chapter or verse. With that, I want to now toss it over to our moderator, Mark Thomas, who is going to take us out unless someone has a question or comment. And I will pause just for a second. Baby Mark.
I have a question real quickly for the entire panel. Good morning, everybody. My question would be, when you are indecisive in a decision that you're wanting to make, and some people, old folks say, back in the day, follow your first mind, but then it seems like that first thought is not the right thought. I mean, how do you get to a place where you can say, okay, I'm just going to jump right in, or this is something you should meditate, but then when you're doing it, you still have all these undecisive thoughts. What is the way to control that? Or what is the way to know that you're doing the right thing, moving in the right direction, or making the right decision?
Gotcha. Let me make sure we understand your question. So when you have a thought, and you're right, a lot of people say, go with that first thought you have. But you hear us saying today, you want to meditate and know those thoughts. So which one of our contributors like to answer that? Dr. Griffo or Lavelle? I see that you are unmuted. Would you like to respond to that, Brother Lavelle?
Yes, I would say that you never want to make a decision, especially a pertinent decision in life, when you are agitated, angry, or upset. So you want to calm yourself, and you want to stabilize your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions before making that decision.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you want to to add on to Brother Lavelle's point, you want to go into some meditation, because meditation is where the answers are going to come from within yourself, instead of just making a decision based on what you see in the world. If you make decisions based on what you see in the world, I think that Mark Thomas said that they might be an illusion. It may not be the real thing, because the world might be showing you something different, and the truth is in between, or the truth is within you. So go into meditation. And I always say, you know, when people say, well, you know, let me sleep on it. You know, I tell you one thing, when you go to sleep, before you go to sleep, and you ask your subconscious mind and you meditate on what that you need an answer to something, you'll be surprised that the next day when you get up, you will be clear on the direction that you need to go in. Anybody want to add anything to that for Navy Mom?
Navy Mom, Navy Mom, I tell you, that's what I consider remembering compounding issues. When you have a rash, you make a rash decision, a lot of times we forget about the underlying issues that have caused us problems before that we have not taken care of. You have to take care, and people are, oh no, I see that you got this and you got, no, but wait a minute now, you gotta make sure. That's what meditation is very important. That's where in church, prayer is important. You're not just praying, you're meditating and trying to look at what that desire is of yours, and then you gotta look at what underlying issues that you have, because we tend to forget them and we compound them and keep on building on them and on. And then when we do finally get what we think was a blessing, it comes back to haunt us, because we didn't take care of some things that could have simply been taken care of before we jumped out there. So you need to meditate.
Thank you for that, Pastor Archie. So with that, thank you for that question, Navy Mom. And I hope that we have answered your question, did we?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much.
No problem. Now we're going to pass it over to Mark Thomas, who's probably pulling his fingernails out right now because we are overtime. Sorry about that.
No, I'm fine and all. We can go on all day if you want to.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I guess we're going to wind it up anyway. So all of us here with SRC, we want to thank the audience for joining us today. Our next broadcast will be in 1 week on September 26th. So please join us at 10 a.m. as always, as we continue to reveal the book of Numbers. We really appreciate everyone's patronage and encourage you to email us your questions or comments at shiftingreligiousconcepts@gmail.com. And if you're interested in advertising with SRC, please contact us at that same email. And don't forget that this presentation will be available on YouTube within the next few days. Even if you attended today's program, please go to the Shifting Religious Concepts channel and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. This really helps us get public attention, and it's one of the few ways we have to promote the SRC mission. So if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, go to shiftingreligiousconcepts.com/registration and join us that way. All right, that winds it up for today's broadcast. Once again, watch your email for our Zoom link inviting you to attend our next recording session on the 26th of September. In the meantime, we wish you all peace, health, wisdom, and love.